And
today we're thrilled to welcome Olympic judge, former pair skater, designer of the ISU and lightning rod, Joe Inman, as well as a noted musician. Joe, welcome to the skating lesson.
Grazie, mi piace.
oh, an Italian scholar for all. Okay.
Yeah, I wish.
Okay.
So, Joe, we have a million questions for you, but we want to start people back at the beginning. How did you get involved with the crazy sport known as figure skating?
I skated when I was very young. My father was in the military, and we lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I started skating there, not really lessons, just going on the ice and, goofing around like kids do. And then I took a few lessons. And then I guess I was about 6, and we moved to Texas. Well, that was the end of that for a while. And I got involved in being in Texas. My brother was the jock of the earth. He was All-American, everything in high school. Seriously, basketball, football, and they wanted me to be the same way. Well, fortunately for me, in a way, I got my knee racked up and in football, had surgery, and I said, that's it. And so this is a funny anecdote to me in my life. So the coaches called me and my mother in because my father died in a car accident when I was 13. And the coaches tried to convince my mother that I should continue, that I could be All-American this, blah, 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 blah. Well, I hated football. I thought it was the dumbest sport ever.
Agreed.
And still think it's dumb. All you do is want to kill each other. So I said, I'm done. I'm going to figure skate again. And they said, what? And it was like, and they threw me out of the room and talked to my mother. And my mother was fabulous. Mm-hmm. And she said, he's going to do what he wants to do. That's the way he is. And I will support him in those. So I took it back up, went to Austin, took lessons, took some figure tests, blah, 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 blah. Had to stop because music became omnipotent in my life. And so my sophomore year, I stopped skating. I took it back up in college, found a pair partner. They moved to Washington because her father was finishing his career out in the Pentagon. And we skated until I was probably 28. We were mediocre at best. We did make it to, we were South Atlantic a couple of times, and we were 4th. So that meant 3rd one time. Mm-hmm. And we went to Easterns one time, but we were 4th. But anyway, the whole point being is we never got to nationals, which was great because nobody wanted to see us.
Wait, did the pewter not make it to nationals back then?
No. 4th did not go. It was only 1, 2, 3.
When did the pewter become a thing and go to...
Oh, who knows? When they started the test system as saying, it's not pass-fail anymore, it's retry. Okay. Does that tell you?
Yes.
Nobody fails in life. You just retry in life.
You also get to retry elements for those who actually don't take the... So if you mess up a free skate, you can retry 2 elements, and a moves test is 1 that you can retry, I think.
One moves, and they keep changing things.
Yeah.
Now, do you think they should do that at the Olympics? You can just have 1 wild card, and you just get to retry an element.
Yes.
Well, do you think they should do that in an opera?
Yes, I would like them to for my colleagues.
If the singer is sharp all the way through, should we stop the opera and say get out?
I've been in many where they haven't, so.
No, I know we won't go there.
I took one of my tests, and they had me redo. They had me redo my combination because one of the judges didn't see it. And I said...
That I would never admit.
I know! I was like...
You kidding me?
They didn't know that I was like a skating blogger at the time. So I just nodded very politely and I redid it. It was, look, I did my program the same way every time. So there is no way.
Well, was it Jan Hoffman or something like that at Europeans where the judge looked down and missed the fall? where they were like, wait, but he fell down, and the judge said, oh, I must have been writing during that time, during the...
Well, I will tell you, when I've been a referee, one of the things I key the judges into, the worlds I did, I wanted to do an Olympics, but a story which is not necessary to be told. I remember telling the judges in LA, don't look down for 3 seconds. And then when you look down, glance your eyes down, always know where your pencil is.
Right.
And if you know, that's why I hold, if you've ever seen, I hold my board up here and I'm writing like this. It's like reading music, Jonathan.
Right.
You see, I can see my writing as I see what's going on. So I never ever look down, except when it was boring.
I heard a rumor about you that I heard that you draw the pattern as you judge. Is that true?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
The pattern is drawn in the little box next to it. It's just to remind me on the ice where the element was placed. And when I go back and look, I can see how everything was dispersed. And if it's on the music, I put a music note. If it fits a crescendo, I have a crescendo in there. I have all kinds of musical things. I programmed myself. I taught myself to do this. And it's what you have to do if you want to be really, well, try to be a good judge.
Yeah.
Good meaning, fair, and have reasons for what you do.
So in gymnastics, they actually teach the judges a shorthand system that they have to learn how to use. So you're onto something, Joe. You are a trend setter in this, because in gymnastics, when they do the skills, there's a shorthand that they use so that they're not looking down as they're judging. So.
Yeah, well, I did a seminar in Canada years ago in Toronto, and I drew out the program as it was going on, the way I judge. And they were all like, how do you do that? And I said, you have to practice. Like anything, practice makes easy, as I tell my children that I teach, which I don't teach any kids anymore. I tell my adults. So, but that's basically, I feel like when I'm done with the program, I know what I've seen. And
and Dave and I have even mentioned a couple times this season, we'll watch a program and it may not grip us in the same way that some of the others. And I literally can't even tell you what content they just did sometimes.
Well,
I literally was like, wait, what did they just do? Did I just even watch a program?
Well, I will tell you, watching it on video after all these jillions of seminars I've done and finding things for seminars and going through a jillion tapes of stuff, it's not the same. You don't get to see the whole rink. You see parts of it. You don't get to feel the speed. And you don't get that sense of, if you've skated, what it looks like when a skater is truly into the ice, that the edges are really the depth of the edge. And that's one thing I look for in a step sequence, is the depth of the edge. And that's why I'm a little off sometimes on judging the steps. I'm not as generous. And if it doesn't work with the music,
I feel that way too.
That's the main thing with the step sequence. It takes sometimes between 25 and 40 seconds to do those step sequences. That's a huge amount of the program.
Yes.
Right.
And often I find that if, I'm big about pictures and music and putting it together, and if I can't remember the step sequence and the movements as part of the choreography, that's a huge piece of the choreography in addition to the steps. And there are so many skaters that just are doing it to do, add A, B, and C together for different turns, and it has nothing to do musically. So we'll get into that. But I wanted to get into, how did you start judging? Because this would obviously become a huge passion in your life.
Well, anecdotally, a lady by the name of Florence Sifford, from our area was the grandmother of us all. And in this area of the country, the South Atlantic area in Washington, Virginia, she gave me a clipboard one day and said, it's time for you to start draw judging. You're the type that needs, with your music background, you need to be judging dance. So she had me trying dance. I said, nah. So she said, but you're going to do figures and everything also. Well, we had to do so much in figures. I went to get your gold test. I went all over the country. I spent $10,000, I figured out, of my own money trialing to become a national judge in those days. It's very different now. Without figures, you don't have to fly around. They don't care if you're out of your area. It was very difficult when I was coming up the ladder because the judges were very territorial. They didn't want a lot of new people coming in. So it was really breaking barriers. And I was not a loudmouth, but I asked a lot of questions. And they really didn't care for that too much.
Nothing has changed in skating. What are you talking about,
exactly,
Joe? People are territorial, controlling, perfectionists, uptight, and...
Well, you should have been there, Dave.
I would have fit in so well, Joe.
Probably not have gone on.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's how I got into it. And I loved doing figures myself. And I loved judging them. It's a mind intensity. It's like judging strict technique in your vocal, or analyzing someone's vocal technique, or piano technique, or music technique in any instrument. It's so succinct.
Whose figures were your favorite?
Well, judging figures, I would say I remember she won nationals. She won worlds.
Jill Trenery.
No. The other one.
Rosalind Sumners?
No. One time. Because her free skating was okay, but not the best. Blonde. Utah.
Oh, Holly Cook?
Holly Cook.
She didn't win.
She didn't win a world. It's a nice try, though, Joe.
But she
I thought she won worlds in figures.
Oh, maybe in figures.
Maybe.
In figures. Okay.
No, she was first in figures.
Okay.
That was a big deal back then.
Okay.
Her figures were really quite good. I did get to see Shuba's figures once. She moved like a powerhouse. And she did trace well. But I don't think I don't know, I didn't get to go on the ice. But she was really quite something in that area of the sport.
Did you like Carlo Fossi's students' figures? Was he a good figures, or was it smoking?
There's a real story about this, but I'm not going to tell.
Oh, come on, Joe. You can't say that.
Give us hints or something. Krista doesn't watch.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
I know she does.
No, Carlo was very good at teaching figures. Yes, his students were all, it's not, his teaching technique was fine. The difference is, can the student do it? You're only as good as your kid or the students you're teaching in anything. So you know that in your own world of teaching, Jonathan.
Right.
You can have, and then you can have some wonderful, emotional, musical students that can't do the tricks.
That's usually who I'm a fan of. It seems to be a theme. And
it's difficult in my judging, and we'll maybe get into that in a minute. So, but that's, that I would say, he was a good teacher. I watched him teach several times. And he in his Italian accent, he was very good.
Now,
and I liked him. He was really a very pleasant person to me. He treated me with lots of respect, and so does Krista.
So in Sonia Bianchetti's book, she says that that Katarina Witt's figures, the judging of them, was always a huge scandal, but that it was probably good for the sport that they cheated for her. Do you agree with that? I mean, how would you have evaluated her figures?
Well, I only saw her figures once, and they were horrible.
Okay.
Horrible meaning on the scale of 1 to 10, they were like a 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, the worst figures I ever saw from somebody who was on the world podium was Surya Bonali.
Really?
How? Yeah, I can't imagine those figures were even possible.
I judged them in Saint Gervais when she was first coming up the ladder. Oh my God, they did a rocker. She had no axis, she had no circles. They were like ovals. I can't even explain. I couldn't find one thing good. So I gave it a 1.75. And see, I'm on this system. I gave it a 1.5. And I heard these marks: 1.5, 3.5, 3.75, 3.7, 2.5. All these threes, which was a high mark.
Yeah.
And I'm at 1.75. So we get in the room, and the referee says, "Mr. Inman, can you tell us why you were so low on Miss Bonali's figures?" I said, "Can you tell me why you were so high?" And she started laughing, and the whole group laughed. I got no letter or anything. She knew I was right. It's not a matter of being right. It's a matter of just, they were not good.
How do you, I don't know how you're aware of this, but over the last 4 or 5 years, it seems like Surya has a great publicist or something managing her career. And there have been these documentaries. There was an episode of a great podcast by NPR all about how Surya was robbed in skating because of her racism. And of course, the sources backing her up were Tanya Harding, Elvis Stoico, and Tara Lipinski, who were saying that she was a wonderful artistic skater and that the judges just hated her. So, do you have any comments?
But to Surya's credit, Surya is not a part of this kind of PR movement. She's doing the interviews as requested, but she's kind of letting them insert that narrative of.
She suggests it. She suggests it, and they run with it.
Who's she?
Surya.
Oh, basically, if you want to know the truth, Surya is a good performer in this out of competitive skating. To me, I enjoy her as a performer. She's exciting. She does unusual things. I don't particularly think she's a great edge skater. I think her figures showed that. And I don't think any of those ideas. I don't personally think when she competitively skated that she had a clue what she was skating to musically. I mean, if you go back and look at the programs and listen to the music and find the phrasing, you'll find she misses every high point in nearly every phrase. I mean, you're expecting at least a build-up to a jump, and maybe it's not going to happen right at that peak, but it's got to happen somewhere within that measure of that peak, a short period of time. And I never could find them. It's always racing around to get something done. But nowadays, she's a good performer, and the music she chooses, you don't necessarily have to skate to it.
Now, given like you were on that cusp, right? Like you saw a lot of skaters compete in figures that then kind of got all their titles without having to do them. So I'm always intrigued, like what the judges' take was like on, for instance, right at that cusp, that Nancy, Tanya, Christy kind of turnaround in their generation, like how you felt things would have been different for them if figures had remained in competitive competition.
For the next generation coming up?
Yeah, for even that like 92, 94 bubble year.
Well, I think really Sonia's right. The reason figures went out for what she said. They were not judged very well.
Yeah.
They were really judged poorly. If you are a good free skater, you automatically were going to be higher. You turned the other way. And judging-wise, judges got tired of getting letters all the time. So this is my opinion. They just finally, Sonia said, we don't need this anymore. I do think, Jonathan, personally, and Dave, that figures are a great tool for developing technique of body movement, and especially the edge. Everything starts from the foot in skating and with edges. And if you don't ever get that, you may be able to jump, but you're never going to be an all-rounded skater. You may win the Olympics, but that's because of your tricks. Because the points now, with those little Russian girls doing all these quads, I mean, it's hard when you get those points. Even if you went down to a 7 or a 6, they're still going to win because the points are so high for those quads and stuff.
Do you think, so you talk about the judges overlooking things during the figures era, and when we see a lot of programs now, one of the biggest crimes I see is that they don't differentiate the marks on the program components, and it's weighted as such that the technical outweighs the program components, especially when they don't differentiate it. And it seems like when you see a skater like Max Aaron, and the lowest the judges go is 7, or Vincent, and they don't go below 7 in skating skills or transitions, what are your feelings about that? Because there was a very famous instance at the 2010 Nationals. Joe Inman, allegedly, because I think the judges were anonymous, but this gave a skater who skated in pleather and pink tassels a 3.75 for transitions at the Nationals in the short program. So what is your feeling about the judges who don't dare to give someone a 3.75?
Well, I mean, it's 9 people in the panel, and either they didn't think that there was anything, or they thought there was enough, or what, in their analysis. For me, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yes.
And if you go back and look at that program, plus the long program, you tell me what variety of movement is in the program between the lower body, the upper body, skating movements, and unlisted elements. Those are the 4 things you look for in variety. And if you don't see that variety throughout the program balanced, you tell me.
No, I'm not debating. I think you're correct.
So
but
what I'm saying is, I mean, people came off and they said, "Oh, that's Joe," because they know that I'm going to do what I believe in. And he was very nasty to the press about that, if you remember.
Yes.
And that old American judge, he doesn't know anything anyway. So, and I monitored him a lot when he was young with Priscilla.
Yeah.
He was pleasant to work with. He was a talented kid, but young man at that point. But, it's just the way it goes. I have to judge what I see. He has to skate how he feels, what he believes in his being of whatever, and neither the twain shall meet on this occasion. But I spread my marks. I gave him some other good marks.
Yeah.
But for that, to me, and plus I didn't care for the choreography that much, but not a 3.75. I think I was at 7 or something.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, I think that really is the difference, because when Dave and I have done our judging exercises, for instance, each category, like you were saying, is wildly different. Someone's skating skills doesn't mean that they have a program with transitions or a performance. Quality has nothing to do with their speed or ice coverage. You know what I mean? So, but I think, like you're saying, you can back up your statement because you absolutely, obviously care very much about the IJS categories, and you could say, no, in this category I need this, and this person did not give it to me, so how could I say that? Whereas I don't know that most other judges are so headstrong and believe so adamantly in the message they are sending.
Well, I think part of it is educating yourself musically to understand. And the big thing to really understand, and it's using this, right, is the ear, is phrasing. Because everything comes, yourself in music. It's all about structure and the phrasing, and from there you figure out the emotion and how you're going to shape an idea. You know, notes rise up, they come down.
Mm-hmm.
You find the peak, you find an ending. And there's always a tension release at the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier, I think, than probably a lot of these skaters think. Because everyone does have ears, and even though they may not be
and
trained,
that's what I was wanting to go out and do.
Mm-hmm.
Develop their hearing better, how they listen to music. And that's one of the best things. And I think it's like me when I was young. I hated Richard Strauss. I said, ugh, who can listen to that?
Me,
and as I grew, he's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I love his music. And it's just a developing of how you listen and studying music intellectually, understanding more. Now, I don't expect my judge compatriots to be able to understand at the same level I do, because they'd have to go to 6 years of college, plus a master's degree, etc. I mean, those 6 years. But my belief is it got better. It got better. Now people have to trust themselves. So they get nervous that they're going to be out of the corridor. Now it's not a corridor anymore. I'm not for sure exactly how they're doing it. And so they get nervous and they don't want to overexpand their marks. And then a Joe Inman comes in and I throw 2 points of a difference. And they ask me, and I give this long explanation, and what can they say?
Mm-hmm.
All they can say is, well, I don't agree with you. But I've given them a major foundation for why I did what I did. The biggest thing is, I was going to say something. One thing about the system when we developed the components was they told us they didn't want any overlapping of criteria.
They all overlap.
Thank you. They do, but you can still judge in a little box, skating skills especially. That can be. But of course, without good skating skills, you can't do the rest of the components. But the big one that I got into that they wanted to change, and they've done some changes without consulting Laurie or I, who wrote them, and I think that is wrong, that they should have asked us what we thought, or whatever, they didn't. And they've, to me, bastardized interpretation. Interpretation was kept simple, and now they've added that you have to skate to a beat. In other words, that's for the dance people, but it sounds like it has to be for the singles. Well, you know, Jonathan, yourself, if you have a melody, you have a beat.
Oh, yeah, like what is it?
You have rhythm without a beat, and rhythm makes the melody move. So I don't know what they're getting at. They just didn't listen. And the thing I'm saying is like phrasing. Phrasing is the ideas of which are sections of music that occur, and they're musical ideas, and they have rhyme and reason by the composer. Movement should reflect that rhyme and reason of the way the notes move up and down. So in interpretation, it's about the details of the music within the phrase structure. What's happening, crescendos, diminuendo, loud, soft, all that kind of stuff. And then in the choreography, it's about the design of the program, because you can't design a program without understanding the phrasing. So that is a big overlap.
So it's a bit more of a micro.
You can still separate those out.
So you view it as a micro-macro thing. One is like sort of the big picture of the program, and one is sort of the more nuanced detail of it. Okay.
So I was, in doing research for something that Jonathan and I were going to do, I was watching Tuktamisheva, and I knew that we were going to have to discuss about who deserves to go to the World Championships for Russia. And there's the scores that she's actually getting versus what she should be getting. And when I was watching Tuktamisheva, she skates her entire program on 2 feet, doing really shallow crossovers. She does point with her arms occasionally to certain people in the audience, but there's no transitions, there's no variety, there's poor skating skills. I would say the transitions are worse, and there's no real choreography.
Levels, yeah.
But she does give pizzazz at times. So how would we evaluate her? I would give her low marks for choreography, really low marks for transitions, about average marks for skating skills on the low end. Maybe performance for interpretation and performance execution at times. I mean, how would you evaluate someone like that?
Well, to me, excuse me, let's go back to Ryan Bradley, whom I think is a wonderful young man. He, if you remember the Nationals, he won.
I did not agree with that, yes.
What he skated to. It was about the performance, how he brought the audience out of the seat and made them love him and believe in what he was doing. Skating skills?
Not great.
Transitions?
Not great, Joe.
Choreography?
Piss poor. Hokey.
Interpretation even. Even interpretation, if you look and say, this, yes, he did perform. He executed ideas by his body, but not enough within what the details of the music were to show me. It was all about the forte of the piece, the energy. It was all about energy. There was never a variety and contrast.
It's the difference between going to the Olive Garden and going to a fine Italian restaurant and explaining to someone what the difference is. And Ryan Bradley is more on the Olive Garden thing. It's enjoyable. It fits in
easy to understand, accessible
for the masses. Great for Stars on Ice.
But I'm not trying to tear him down.
No, but he would win the Nationals.
He was a good skater, but in many, many ways. But what I'm saying is, and he's entertaining, and he's still entertaining.
But he would go to the Worlds and get 5s in components and be 18th place repeatedly and not have, and he just won the Nationals, and we didn't send someone like Jeremy, who maybe didn't have his best skate, but did fill the different requirements.
Yeah, to just beat your metaphor to death, Dave, I feel like then someone like Jeremy that year is this fine Italian cuisine, but they just dropped the plate coming out from the kitchen. So now we have this fine thing, but it's been dropped a couple times.
Well, I think basically it's still the old adage, if you can do the tricks, your components are going to be up there. And it goes to show, if you do those tricks as soon as you start cheating a little, they have reason to bring you down in the components. But now maybe this is a harsh analysis of my compatriots, but it's not necessary that all all the tricks make the greatest skating, the greatest interpretation. And it can be shown in music the same way, with some great technical singers who really don't phrase the music well, and they don't bring emotion into what is there. And there are more of those than not. No.
Well, and Dave and I go back and forth. We talk about important skating versus less important skating, so that even though sometimes we see a clean performance, like kind of the general takeaway just doesn't matter as much. And
let me give you an example. I don't know anybody's name, by the way. I don't learn names. I want a blank slate there when I see it, so I don't really know who they are that much. Of course, you end up knowing a Gracie Gold or somebody like that, especially when you monitor them. And that's another world unto its own. But the young girl that won our Nationals,
Alyssa Liu,
she was clean as a whistle.
Novice level skating skills.
Yes, and but you can't really tell that as great on a
TV.
TV. The biggest thing is in her steps is watching the depth of edge. She skims over the rockers and counters, and you know, and I'm not for sure if she got a level 4 or not, But I wouldn't have, as a TC, I wouldn't have given it to her because her rockers and her counters were not, to me, they were too shallow. Just my opinion. But the other thing is, she does have a sense of feeling for what she was doing. It wasn't total program looking. She had moments where it was. But I said, this girl could just be jump, 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 like the girl that won the Olympics the last time. That put all of her things in the last part of the program.
Zagitova.
Now, that was a wind-up doll to me. A lot of people say, but she was so musical with her arms. I said, anybody can do their arms and make them. It
had nothing to do with Don Quixote.
What about the rest of the body? What about whatever? Anyway. And nobody dumped the choreography. Not one person dumped it.
So how would you judge that choreography?
In no art of 5-5.
Correct. I agree. Because the entire first half was her steps and her spins, and she was bored on the ice.
It's balance. Yeah. Art is about balance. When I've taught the components or worked with judges of the components, I said balance is a key word. Look at all great art. And we bring paintings in and stuff. And so what I do is I cut out things in the painting and then say, what do you feel when you don't see what's supposed to be there? Well, it's not balance. I said, that's interesting. You're using that word here. It's got to be in this. You've got to be able to analyze everything at once. And it's difficult. I'm not just trying to disparage or take away, because I will say all the judges I know now are technically very good. They know what is the technical part of the sport. Now, do they have different ideas on skating skills? Yeah. But if you look at the difference of skating skills around the world, there are differences. But to me, I have it set in my mind from doing figures what I should see. It doesn't have to be a clean rocker. You're not going to see that on a free skating boot. But you want to see the motion and the movement of a full rocker. Rocker like a 3-turn. So you see this motion in and then out.
So how many of the judges on the world level do you think are judging just from opinion and their educated opinion based on what's going on? And how many do you think in a contentious competition are from a political nature? Because the more you learn about the system, the more you can manipulate the system. Or the more, and when I redo and look at what happened in Sochi with Sotnikova's win, it looks like that situation was manipulated by people who knew the mathematics behind it. Just down to each...
Well, I will tell you, it was easier in 6-0 to manipulate. And you could go to people. It's harder in this. I've never had. I did in the other system. 2 times have some judge come up to me. And in a world championship once. And whatever. But I never have had in this.
Well, wait, what do you mean, whatever? Because this is actually the part as fans, there is always so much speculation about what does or does not happen in terms of reputation, judging, pressure.
There was more, definitely, because it only took one place.
So take us through it.
Okay.
So what happened?
Perfect case, 2002 Olympics. I was drawn to be judge number 9. The last judge drawn. 10th judge was from the Ukraine, Mr. Petrikov.
Which discipline? This is ladies.
Ladies.
Why Mary Lou Reef is still mad at you on Twitter all the time. Yes.
Who is?
There's a woman named Mary Lou.
A Michelle Kwan fan.
And she will never get over it.
Oh, well, I've talked to Michelle about this.
Okay.
And she I'll have to tell you what she said to me.
Okay.
But I wasn't going to say now. Okay. So he was number 10, the substitute. Well, I was drawn. So he became the substitute. If he had been drawn, Slutskaya would have won. He had her first on his boards, and that's all that was needed was one more first place for her. Does that tell you that system?
Yeah.
But they do it here too. You still see it if you pay attention to the judging, and especially when I was re-looking at Sochi, and I'll give my conclusions at the end of the final video, but there are different things that are happening, and when you watch the certain judges that went for Sotnikova, and it was blind and blatant as day, that there was manipulation going on between the step sequences and certain levels and how they judge things, and it was really quite something, So
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm not going to give you an affirmative on that either.
Yes.
There are, in everything in life, there's play games, and you don't want to play games with people's lives in this sport, and we're very cognizant of that. I'm not for sure Russians care about. I don't know. Trump may think so, but whatever. But for me, I go on a panel, I judge what I'm seeing, and I try to do the best at giving a mark that represents what I see in the skating from my background of knowledge and my education. And education levels are all very different in the arts. In the components, in the technical, there are just opinions sometimes on that. And there might be blatant, if you get too blatant, the trouble is there's not enough, in my opinion, I complained about this, accountability.
Yeah.
There is accountability by the OAC, but we can never say this judge should be suspended. All we could do is show where the discrepancies were, and then the technical committee would make that. Then they have rules in that. So, but to me, they should be able to say, this is blatant. You're out for a year. And they do that when they want to, but it's very rare. But I just think if you're going to have an OAC, you only put the best people on it. And they're trying to put people from around the world on it. And to be quote unquote fair, but I think you need the best people. And one of the best people was taken off of being on the OAC. She never did it again after being with me.
Who?
And Sissy Crick.
Okay.
She was taken off because they didn't like the way she analyzed it. And I don't want to get into it, but it was fascinating. And they went against her for letting her do that anymore. I don't know why.
Now,
but I never asked.
One of my favorite judges ever has to be Vanessa Riley from the UK. Opinionated, called it like she seen it, whether you agreed with it or not. Do you have any memories or insight there with judging with
Well, I know Vanessa very well. And she's a character. She's like that. If she doesn't like it, and she's very opinionated, more than I am. I mean, her background in music and the arts is okay, but it's not at a high level. But she has reasons for why she does it, and you may disagree, but she'll give you a reason. She's never without a reason. And she did pull some humdingers.
Yeah.
Arts in 6-0.
She loved a 5-0 for someone when the rest of everyone is at 5-7. She loves it. Yeah.
In 6-0.
In the 6-0, yeah.
Well, this system, I'm not for sure what she did. Because you don't know. And we don't ever go back and discuss anything anymore. In 6-0, the one thing I do miss is we used to immediately get off the ice, say, where'd you put what so-and-so? Well, I had him first. What? You had him first? How did you do that? But and now you don't do it because you don't know. And I will tell you, sometimes I had 4 people with the same performance mark. Because when you look at all the criteria and balance it out, the mark came back to that. I didn't spend my time saying, well, this is 0.25 better. So it didn't make any difference. You're doing a standard of what you think based on your knowledge and your experience. So you give that mark. And this is what I disagree with placing the skaters via the components because it takes away. You're not placing a skater with a mark. You are giving a standard that you think this skater is worth 525, and it's a balance of all. If you marked each criteria, it would come out to 525, for example. So, and you put the paper down. You don't go back and look. So, unless you're cheating, which there have been judges caught writing down what they gave somebody, so they were still trying to place. I still think there's a bit of placement in this book.
Because
go
ahead, Dave. Well, I'm just curious if you view how you view judging, for instance, like an event we talk about is 98 Olympics, obviously with Michelle and Tara, or other events where you have someone who might have delivered on the night, quote unquote, but isn't necessarily the representative you were looking for and maybe the best overall skater and message. How do you combat those two things?
That's not a competition. You're not looking at an overall balance of a sense of a season of competition. You're looking at a competition, who is the best that day.
So you are in the night.
Yeah. And that's the way we're taught. It's the performance of that point in time. And that's what you're marking on. And you're right. I understand you. Look, that 2002 was very difficult for me. I had a hard time. But when you're sitting there, let me tell you what happened. Before the event started, I went to the bathroom and threw up. I was so nervous. I've never been nervous in this system because I feel like I'm giving my total knowledge and value of what I think something's worth. The other one was a guessing game at times. How did I know somebody was going to skate? So you had to leave room in that marking system. So Sarah Hughes comes out. I said, oh my God. And the little bit cheats on the jump, I wasn't for sure how much they were because our eyes aren't good enough to see. That's what's good about the new system. That is the flaw in the jump. And before, it used to all be based on skating skills. If you had great skating skills and you cheated jumps, it didn't make any difference. You were still going to be up there. In my estimation, it was, unless it was hardly obvious. But, so she goes out and skates, and I'm like, wow. And I'm trying to keep my eyes forward. I kind of look around, and I see the Canadian judge, and our eyes catch each other. And I turn back around quickly because I didn't want anything to look like
anything
impropriety. And so we give the mark. I said, all I can do is 5858. So I gave 5858. And that was the lot of the marks. There was a mixed bag for places for her. She had a fourth place, several first places, and seconds, blah, 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 blah. Then, what's her name comes out and skates? Sasha. I thought Sasha was going to maybe pull it off. Then she went downhill. That was it. The only other one that skated fairly well was Fumi Suguri. And I felt like I undermarked her a little. But Fumi just could not present. So that kept me from being able to bring her. Presentation was a big thing in giving that presentation mark.
She didn't have star quality at all. That was unfortunate, yeah.
She skated very nice. She had beautiful edges. Skating skills. Then Slutskaya comes out.
Michelle was before Slutskaya.
Skated. And then she 2-foots the triple. I don't know if she's doing triple toe.
Yeah, the triple, yeah.
And I said, And then she makes that mess on the triple flip. And she was slow as a snail. She was off her phrasing.
That whole season, she was slow as a snail.
She was so much off her phrasing. I said, God, nothing's matching the music. She's doing movements, but it's like, I've got to get them done. And then Slutskaya comes out frantically, running around the ring, trying to find her phrasing. And she's powerful. She does all the jumps. She has a little fault on one, but she only does the double salto, whatever it was, double salto, double loop. And so I'm like, then I started thinking skating skills were important here. Kwan, they both had one little error. Kwan had two major errors here. And I said, I can't give it technically, but neither one were good in the presentation. So I gave Kwan the presentation, and I gave 2 points less on that, but I gave Slutskaya the same first mark as Sarah Hughes. And that's all I could do to get my placement. That's not what I wanted to do. So I had, what's her name first? Hughes, Slutskaya, and Kwan. Kwan came up to me in Boston on my retirement party there, and she said, Joe, I want to talk to you. And she came up and she gave me a hug. And she said, I want to thank you for all the years that you monitored to me. You always had the best things to say that made sense to me and that I really took to heart. And she said, I wish I would have seen you before I skated in the Olympics to work. But with everything that went on and with family issues and I was not myself. I was all over the place. And I blame myself for all of this. I don't blame you. You did what you had to do, and you were always fair to me. And I thank you. She said, you were the only one that gave me 6-0. I said, that's the only 6-0s I ever gave, ever. And I said, because they changed the philosophy of that to a moment in time, not perfection anymore. And so I said, definitely those two programs were a moment in time. I still remember the Rachmaninoff and the Lyric Angelic. Still remember.
And those...
That's what you have to get in the nines for me. I rarely get in the nines. And Jeremy Abbott had nines. The guy from Canada,
Jeff Buttle.
Jeff Buttle got a 9.5 from me in choreography and presentation at the Gothenburgs. I just thought this is what skating should be. Everything is continuous. One thing leads to another, comes out of the music, with the music. This is art and skating.
So,
at a competitive level.
I want to ask you one other thing about Salt Lake. It's interesting is if you look at the short program, one of the judges actually put Sarah Hughes 10th. I believe it was the Russian judge. But the short program of that is a really interesting event, and maybe Jonathan and I will judge it. And it's hard to judge things now based on how they were judged then. You really have to be fair and judge it as the standards of as the time. And it's interesting because Sarah did have a lot of 1 2/10 deductions throughout that short program where they were a little bit littered. Do you remember that? And okay, yeah.
No, I just remember the long. I do remember I really liked Sasha Cohen. And I can't remember if I had her first or not. She was second, I think, on my board. I still have the paper. The short and the long, just as memorable, to be memorable.
Yeah.
And I look back at it on occasion and say, what I wrote down and what I drew out, this makes sense.
I stand by it. Yeah. Now it's interesting because you talk about like Michelle talking about wishing she had come and done a monitoring session or something like that with you. What is in place with that kind of work with judges? Is that ever tricky then to judge someone? Does that skater feel like, oh, Joe is judging, so I have to do that thing? Or, like...
Well, I don't know. I tell them my job here is to help you be the best you can be, to add from my background in music, to add ornamentation, to add to it, to help you define what is there. And if you want to make changes or add something, whatever, it's up to you. Mm-hmm. I had many teachers tell me things and went out one ear and through the other because I didn't like what they were saying. I didn't believe them. But so that's what you do. You take what you think will work for you, and you take it and use it or discard it. Mm-hmm. And nothing hurts my feelings. And know if I'm ever judging you, I'm not. You know what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Or is your movement matching the music? Mm-hmm. That's all I'm looking for.
Mm. Well, how about the quality of the movement? Because obviously we're looking.
Well, that's understood.
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask.
Some people can move, but Surya could move, but there was no quality to her movement. Mm-hmm. There's more quality to her movement in what she does now than when she competed. So just my opinion.
So I think you've mentioned, and it goes without saying that obviously you have long-standing working relationships with people like Lori Nickel and Frank Carroll. So when we're discussing Michelle, I think it's an interesting point to bring up because obviously you didn't monitor Michelle when she was coachless that season, but you would usually have monitored her when she was working with Frank and Lori. How difficult is that of a situation to remove yourself and just look at the product when you're looking at Michelle's Scheherazade program and usually you had worked with her, with Frank and Lori, and you're looking at kind of the deterioration of what happens when you coach yourself and that sort of a thing?
Well, what they say is we can monitor, but you have to stop monitoring 2 months before whatever competition they're going to do, nationals especially, and you're done. Mm-hmm. Can't monitor anymore. My belief is you have to be able to disassociate yourself. Now, a lot of people say, oh, you can't do that. Well, I think it's like in music. Mm-hmm. They have professionals judging their own students sometimes. Mm-hmm. Major. Like I know, oh God.
Well, Domingo has his own,
right, and
his own competition with the singers.
Bill is judge. Bill Schumann, judge, and it's hard. It's even worse when it's one of your students because know sometimes the fault so well. Those come to the fore, and you have a tendency to penalize more.
Well, or I have seen in some instances where that judge then feels the need to be the harshest to prove.
And I have a tendency to be that way.
I always feel like we are even tougher on the American skaters because we see them so much. We know that Ashley Wagner doesn't have transitions or work on her spins, so we see it so glaringly, when we're watching them. So
well, and like you're saying, Dave, like we probably have seen that program so many times in depth, looked at the step sequences, seen it all in slow-mo. And like you're saying, Joe, like most of the judges probably aren't as familiar with each nuance of each program and have been studying it throughout the season. Like you're trying to get a fresh kind of take on all of it. Yeah.
Well, when I went to practices, I told judges, you go to practices to hear the music, and in the practice, see if it's making sense to what they're doing. So you have a little up on yourself when the performance comes, that you have an idea what they're going to be doing. Now, it may not be anything what they did. They may leave stuff out. I can't tell you how many programs I've judged where I thought they were going to be fabulous, and everything was left out. Mm-hmm. And we have a current skater that is top-notch in the jumping area, and his spins have improved too, who has a tendency to leave out the things to get the quads done. Not as much as he was doing, but still there is something when you look at a program of design and you're looking at the music and the phrasing and listening, how much is their disconnection to the music with the movement? Do I feel a disconnection here? Are they really into the music, even if they're waiting on an edge? If they're going straight down the ice and it takes forever to do that jump, you're disconnected. There's no way in hell you're connected to that music. You're looking for the jump. You're not thinking, oh, my jump is going to be the ultimate of this phrase. And that's what's hard for skating. And that's where it's not at. To me, the worst thing in skating is phrasing. And the choreographer may be doing a bang-up job. I've watched Laurie. She has so much interesting movements. And when I worked with the Chinese team 2 years ago, a week, pairs and some of the singles and stuff, what I saw was all of a sudden they start leaving things out. Pairs don't leave things out so much. They just don't enhance what they're doing with the depth of perception of what they're hearing. But singles, I'll dump this out to get this trick done. And you know what? The trick is probably worth more than the art.
I have a question about pairs, just offhand. How do you judge pairs when you have a situation where you have a Megan and an Eric from Canada, and Eric is quite a nice skater, Megan not as much, or the French pair team, as much as we like them, Vanessa James is not the best skater in terms of skating skills, and Morgan is, and they're against the Chinese, who have beautiful skating skills but aren't currently executing. How do you balance the two skaters in a partnership when one skates at a much higher level than the other?
Well, for me, if you look at the Chinese team, that's about unison.
Yes. And
even if they're not executing the tricks greatly. Well, even though the last competition I saw was just the jump that was the issue with her, and she got the second one. But the execution of everything is pretty good. They were off their phrasing a little bit for me, but they know each other. When a hand goes up and they're backwards, they're matching. They know each other so well, like Gordiev and Greenkopf used to be. And I feel like that Chinese team is getting close. And the former Chinese team of Bingbo or whatever the name is.
Shen and Zhao.
Oh, Shen and Zhao. Oh, okay.
Shen and Zhao.
Sorry.
He said he doesn't do names of any.
I don't do names. Sorry.
Okay.
I know him too.
Okay.
But I really don't know names. Don't even know mine. So, but they were very. It's all about unison in pairs. That's why if you don't stick together, it's that's
or are not correctly matched from the get-go.
This is our pairs problem. Well, a lot of the pairs aren't matched anymore.
None of the American pairs are matched. None of them.
They're about the same height and they're both short. And the French team is pretty matched. Who was the? Oh, no, I didn't think they were matched. The Canadian team.
Yeah.
For me, the difference for them is the unison, and she never stayed in the character of the music. I'm sorry.
Well, her character was aggressive competition. That was her character.
According to the music, it wasn't.
Yeah, no,
right,
correct.
Right. They needed the race car program.
She was attack.
Yeah.
And when you go pump your fist, that means I'm definitely not in my knees.
Well, okay, I don't mean to sound like a curmudgeon about it, but we also, Dave, we'll talk about this when we talk about the competition that happened in Russia. But like these moments when the skaters are breaking that fourth wall.
Oh, Evgeny going like this. Well, she was in the music. She was in the music.
I was like, but suddenly we're in a performance like, I don't know, even the Rudy Galindo wave in 96 at Nationals when it was going so well. I was like, well, come on, you're delivering like this kind of iconic Swan Lake now. And you would have just like broken the character with a wave or a fist.
It was a moment in time for Rudy.
Yeah, exactly. And some people seem to find it endearing. To me, it kind of just like cheapens. It takes me out of.
Well, that's because you're an artist and we study art for art's sake. And this is a competitive sport with an art part. So I look at it that way, but it still bugs the crap out of me because I don't think it's a part of what should be there. I'm a purist that way. That's just the way I am. That's the way I'm going to judge it.
It's very Plushenko to me. It's very put on. But
showboaty.
I do. Do you think that, as we were talking about phrasing, and again we were studying something, do you find Rika Kihira has the best phrasing of the females this season? That free skate?
I can't say best because it's each individual with their music. She's very good with what she does. Mm-hmm. I would say 95% of the time it makes real sense to me and works. The Japanese girls in general are pretty good with that, in my opinion. Our girls, the little one actually was okay with her phrasing. The interpretation was my problem.
Brady doesn't really have any second mark. It's
she has work to do.
Yeah, work to do. That's a nice way of putting it, Joe. Very diplomatic for you. I'm impressed.
Now, I'm also intrigued because, like, when we talk about someone like Brady, a lot of what we're seeing is the work of a choreographer, right? Especially in those where they have, like, a continual relationship with a choreographer that they continually use. So when you as a judge are looking at choreography marks and things like that, is it how much... someone like Lori probably costs $1 bazillion compared to some of the other people. So, I mean, how does one really judge a skater separate from the choreographer they may or may not have been able to hire?
Well, I mean, there are talented people that don't make $1 jillion. That you just look at what's there.
Yeah.
You have to look at what they're giving you, and is the person skating able to do what you think the design is. When you see the design without the jumps, you really get an idea of what's supposed to be there. When you see it with the jumps added and they're performing and they leave things out, you know exactly where the problems are.
Right.
And that's the problem, maybe seeing things in practice and rehearsals. But you know what? It's part of the ball game.
Yeah.
Now, how about a situation where, so when Evan Lysacek skated, you could tell that Lori crafted that program to bring out the most of Evan. Evan was not a particularly musical skater. It often would seem like he would skate through the music, but do things maybe when they were supposed to happen. So it's kind of a conundrum, yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what... finding the high points in the music, and they designed the movements for that. And he was able to do it at those points. And yeah, at times he skated through the music. But in general, that performance became passionate at the end. He got the energy from the crowd and the fact that he was skating clean. I think that brought it to another level that you may not have seen. And those are part of what that performance, when you're judging it, brings. If you look at the Plushenko performance, it's just the same thing over and over again. There's not much choreography there. The step sequence he lives for, and that's it.
And he does have beautiful quads.
And you look at 2006. Go over that program again. Tell me if it really makes any sense movement-wise, what the variety of movement is, and does he really keep up the energy level of that music, which is so fast. The tempo's not fast, but the way it's written with 16 notes, it's fast. So it comes off like, energized. But to me, it's interesting.
One of my other favorite Joe Inman moments was before the Vancouver Games. the press had a field day because you had sent out an email about how to evaluate Plushenko. But one of your judging counterparts told me that you send out emails frequently just espousing your opinions, and that the Russian media basically just kind of manipulated this fact. That
Well, actually, it was the one that brought it out was the French president.
Didier,
Didier.
yeah.
He's one that reported to some French magazine. What I said was, if you go back and look at it, I'm paraphrasing, so basically short. I said, wow, look at these comments. I guess they know their own skating.
True. They have to know.
I did not say he's a lousy skater, what's going on. I said, they both say I don't even think I said that. Look at what they both say about their skating. You know what he said. Plushenko said, he doesn't have transitions. I don't have transitions. I don't know why his component marks are higher than mine for transitions.
I think Evan did have more transitions than Plushenko.
Yeah, you wonder if they don't actually understand what a transition is, because, no, for real, there was a lot. Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, that's the wrong word. Laurie and I didn't want that word.
Okay.
They gave us the words.
So how did you create the how were you picked, and how did you create?
Okay, here's the way it all started. ISU called Charlie Sear and me and said, we have 5 ideas, not criteria, but statement points, and we want you to develop criteria for them. How to judge these things. I said, and they wanted it by the end of the weekend.
Change the sport in 2 days or less. Yeah.
We worked, Charlie and I put some stuff together, and I said, I will give you this, and Charlie agreed. We will give you this if you let Laurie Nickel and I work on developing something serious that makes sense from our backgrounds. Mine in music, hers as a choreography, and her study. And it was, that was to, who's the head of the technical committee? Was Lekurnik. Alexander
the mathematician, yes.
And he said, yes, do it. And so I went to a seminar. I hadn't even asked Laurie yet. And I went to a seminar, and Laurie was on my case about what we had written. How could you say that? I said, Laurie, we did these so fast. Well, this doesn't make any sense. You should have this. Then I said, okay, put your mouth where your money is, or whichever you say it. And I said, I want you to work with me on developing a criteria, something serious that could be for posterity, forever, unless they decide, like they are, that the judges didn't understand it. They had to make it simpler, and they made it more difficult, in my opinion. So Laurie and I worked on it 6 weeks. Every night we spent several hours on it, and we would send it back and forth via computer, and different color changes. I think we had 18 color changes at the end. And I got so confused on which color we were on. So finally I said, okay, final thing, let's just do it all in black, and then we'll make some changes. So what we did originally was we really described, it was what's on the ISU side or USFSA side as components with explanations. That was originally what we did. We went to Munich, and in Munich, people from around the world, we got in there and argued what should be there. They wanted it down to 1 word, 2 words or something, each criteria we were going to use. We said, okay. And so we worked on, oh my God, the arguments. We used Janet Lynn as one of the examples. And the Swiss judge said, why are we using that old? She's old, and that's old skating. Want new skating. And we all looked at him and said, that's some of the best skating in the world ever. Look at as a figure skater. and look at her movements in some of her programs. So anyway, I gave it to Alexander Lukarnik. It was finished. I took it to The Hague. I don't know if it was Junior Worlds or what was happening in The Hague. I was judging. I said, here it is, Alexander. He grabbed it from me. Said, good, thank you. And I said, well, let me know if you're going to use it. And so immediately the next day he said, yes, this is what we're going to use. I said, did you read it? And he said, well, I haven't finished it, which meant he had read it. He just believed us. And that's the way it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they used two people. They were smart enough. I'm not saying I'm the ultimate person they could have used, but I'm truly about the only person in skating with degrees in music to be able to bring that dimension. And then I also have a dimension of dance also, that I studied modern dance at University of Illinois for 4 years. And because I love arts and movement and stuff. And then Laurie did. And we have a real simpatico with each other, understanding, etc. And I respect her highly. Have I said, Laurie, that makes no sense to me? Yes. And she doesn't get mad. She says, okay, why? And I tell her, and she'll change something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Auto history. Boring as it may be.
It's not, because I think a lot of people don't know that element of it.
So
do you know what I mean? Like how exactly that happened. To be in that room in Munich probably would have been fascinating / absolutely a nightmare. Yeah.
So I have a couple ideas for the judging system. I want to know what you think about this, Joe. So one of the things that I thought was nonsensical, and I agreed with, in theory, getting rid of one of the 8 jumping elements for the men. Going down to 7 I thought was fine. I don't think it makes a huge difference if we potentially get rid of a double axel or a triple toe. But I think that they should have kept the music the same length, because one of the biggest problems is that we always hear that these skaters are rushing through the music. They don't have enough time to get anything done to be creative. I think that we should have kept the music the same amount of time and still reduced the number of jumps. That way they have more time for organic and original movement and choreography and for musicality. And on the second hand, I think that one of the spins should be leveled the way that they level the choreographic sequence, because we never get to see just a beautiful spin for the sake of seeing a beautiful spin and a wonderful position. And I think that if someone has a spectacular layback or a spectacular sit spin, that they want to do something really interesting, that we should be able to judge it that way. So I was wondering what you would think about those ideas.
Those ideas, your second one has been presented.
Okay.
And I see the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that they want to try to keep so you can get points.
Mm-hmm.
So that they would have to make that a special item with some kind of points for in some way.
Mm-hmm.
They could do it.
And they did it for the choreographic sequence because they got rid of the second sequence there. Yeah.
To be honest with you, Judge, the choreographed sequence, I really go up, make differences.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them just go +2.
Yeah. Oh, we trust that you make differences, Joe.
But there should be. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
But
But
I
see,
think you're right.
that's
A lot of
all
people
about the
default.
music.
Mm-hmm.
Movement to the music and using edges and
Mm-hmm.
stuff especially. So I don't know. But my big thing is changing components, the criteria around. I mean, they changed to put something different in presentation from another one. I can't remember what it was because I'm not paying attention right now because I tried to back off. To be honest with you, I haven't watched a lot of skating. I watched the Russian girls, just a couple of little things. And I'll give you my basic opinion. None of them interpret the music.
Mm-hmm.
Zero.
And they don't have skating skills either.
But the interpretation of music is worse. They have speed,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have power.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't get into the ice to get that push. And there's so little, there's not enough muscle to, I think your body type after a certain age lends itself to being able to get more power.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion. But I think there is a difference in how you develop a skater like that. So, but I'm not a coach, so.
Well, one of the biggest showdowns this season is going to be between Yuzuru Hanyu, Nathan Chen, who I think you were referring to earlier, and Shoma Uno, who can be quite musical but often leaves a mess of the elements on the ice. How do you look at those men? I mean, Hanyu has a lot of star quality. He does have shortcomings to his skating. Nathan has great jumps. He can leave things out of the program. And Shoma is also incredibly musical, but often inconsistent. So how do you kind of compare them?
Well, it's going to be the performance of whatever mover performs, because they're all good. They all have the guns, be able to do the tricks, and to get the points. Now, the next part, it comes down to personal. And are you really looking and listening? Or are you just giving your biased opinion? And no matter who you are, there are times, the hardest thing for me was to take bias out of my judging. Somebody who I loved, Jeffrey Buttle. What's his name? Jeremy Abbott. To take and, I was hard on them because I expected their movements to never be off the phrasing. And when you make mistakes, that's what judges don't do enough. They don't relate the marks to how the mistake causes phrasing issues, and then how much time is lost with your bum on the ice or getting up and getting your body in position again. It's not just getting in position, it's getting into the right position artistically.
And it affects the performance, of course. I mean, how about the chanflation? What was your take on that? Because often Patrick would have several falls, and he was a beautiful skater with great edges, but it would, of course, detract from the performance.
Well, the perfect case was his performance in London. I would have been in performance 5. It was average. It was average because of the mistakes. The 3 falls broke the program. The whole last half of his program, he was off every phrase. Nothing made sense to me, musically. With the high points were the tension release of those ideas were in the music, and I never felt a release of tension in his body. When you finished an element, that should correspond with the music. Well, back to your other thing, the 3 boys. It's very interesting. I find Hanyu kind of feels and hears his music, but then all of a sudden he lets his body go. His carriage gets lost.
There's a lack of tension. It's noodly sometimes.
Well, his shoulders go forward, then he comes back up, and that bothers me a lot. And he has disconnect in his music. When he makes a mistake, all of a sudden there's quite a disconnect. Shoma is the worst at that. For me, when he misses, he really disconnects. And his phrasing is whoa, 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 all over. Nathan, the interesting thing for him is I rarely feel he gets off his phrasing. He just doesn't carry the emotion through every aspect of the movement. Sometimes he does movement and just does it. Not because I want to show you the character of this music by my body movement here.
I find with
the character the music is about is your body movement is showing you that character or what the music is there. But They're all very good, and any one of them could win. Shoma, my problem is, to me, he's in and out of his music all the time. He never is totally in it. In other words, he leaves it. He's doing something beautiful, then all of a sudden. And then I want you to look at the 2-foot skating. How many times he's on 2 feet?
Well, he's one that I always wish would work with a choreographer like Laurie or like a Tom Dixon or someone who is more well versed in creating these artful IJS programs that have complications to them or depth to them, but also create an emotional impact, because he can create an emotional impact just with his presence. It just seems like there could be a total cool signature style awaiting him that could help him, I think, kind of burst forward more consistently on his PCS marks. Now, how do you do this, Joe, when someone is interpreting music, you just think the music is garbage, or if someone is
there's a lot of that now.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Here's what the problem is. I tell all skaters, if your music has no high points, if you don't feel your notes are moving somewhere, if it's all one level, like you're on a mountaintop and the mountain doesn't move, excuse me, there's nothing there.
Right.
God, I need some water.
Okay, let's pause for a second. Get you some water.
Get it, somebody. All right, so now that I've got like Music Man with me, I've got to ask you about, and I know ice dance isn't necessarily your wheelhouse per se, but last season between the Canadian Moulin Rouge and the French Moulin Sonata, I was just curious. We never talked about this. I was just curious to get your take on if you had a preference towards one or the other.
Yes, I do. But let me give you another quick anecdote. I was on the rise in dance because I took dance tests too. I think I got to through my silvers. I can't even remember. But so I was doing dance judging. And I was up for next level of, I can't remember, the silver level or something. And back then they called them something different. And I was a bronze dance judge, going to be. And then I put my papers in, and they sent them back and said, we don't feel like you know rhythm and understand tempo enough. And so I sent them
It's not me, who? Yeah.
I sent them my 2 degrees and said, I think I understand, but I think I'm too hard on the skaters because they don't skate on a beat.
Right.
I said,
actually,
I
someone doesn't understand it. It's just
skate
not
on
my
a beat.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I love the French scene.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
I love it because everything I feel they do meshes one to the next. Mm-hmm. And I never feel like they're out of their music ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe if you want to find a little something or another. And I never feel like a trick is there just to be, okay, here we have to do this low trick and you're on my leg. You know, like a lot of them do. They say, okay, now it's time for the trick. You know, those weird tricks they do. And the one I loved was the year they skated to the Mozart.
Yes,
yeah,
2015.
Mozart iteration.
I love that. That, to me, I still have it in my head.
Yeah.
Just because it was so... I mean, I really had tears in my eyes at the end because I never had that in skating. It was like, wow. Now, I've had it in dance and ballet and modern dance watching, but with Morse God, I forgot his name. What's his name? Morris, oh, whatever. Anyway, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. But to me, it was down to bias, personal bias of what you like musically with movement, and that's going to happen in art.
Well, it was a general thing.
And dance is more about art.
Yeah.
I think they were, I mean, look, they both had the same choreographer. I thought that they were both exceptional, and I think it does come down to bias. If you were bothered that the French did a similar, thema to their programs for 4 seasons in a row, if you liked Tessa and Scott's more performative, theatrical, presentation, I think on the night too, a lot of that.
In general, like something that also we've been talking about a bit this season is razzmatazz versus a bit more subtle nuance. And we're seeing the struggle take out. And I think sometimes I really do prefer that subtle nuance. But sometimes, if I'm being completely honest, I like just a very cheap and easy sort of razzmatazz kind of thing to understand. So I think for me, like something about the French Moonlight Sonata felt like a dancey, musically, Lincoln Center-y type of performance, where something like Moulin Rouge felt a little bit more Broadway, Vegas, which also has a place. It just becomes a different sort of thing.
Exactly. And for me, the difference was, first of all, the Moonlight was cut beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think the Moulin was cut perfectly. There was one cut in it didn't make.
It was jarring. Yeah.
But to me, the Moonlight, the way they did ABA, came back to the first theme. I just thought, and the movement was a little bit different, but some of it was similar to show the structure of what the music was. So I like the intellectual parts when the choreography has intellect to it too. But that's just me. And that is bias. That's more like personal opinion, personal swaying from your background.
Yeah, I think that there are elements to Tessa and Scott's from a skating perspective, talking first mark, that were superior to the French, talking about how, and even some of the edges, how they designed some of the step sequences and the transitions in the program were really effective.
It was clear that the Canadian program was much more virtuosic and complex technically, I think. But from an emotional standpoint, which I feel like does get to weigh in a bit more at times in dance.
And I think that the Moulin Rouge was designed in a theatrical way to be super effective on the night, on the performance. I mean, obviously, when they changed the program from ending on kind of a down note with a death to ending it on a triumphant note, I mean, it's definitely trying to get more razzmatazz out of it, and it becomes personal opinion.
Speaking of that, changing the end of a program.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people know this because I kept my mouth shut for years. Now I don't care anymore.
This is one of our questions.
I talked to Sarah Hughes' coach when she was putting the music together, and I heard it and saw it for the first time. I said, the end of this program is going to go nowhere. It's a downer. I love it, but it's not going to go to the audience of the Olympics. This is an art form with a sport, so you have to combine. You should have them out of the seats. Take the last part of the Davison Cloy, cut, and I showed her where, cut it there. It's the exact amount of time you need, and do that, and they'll be out of their seats if she skates it. And guess what? Sarah, to this day, says I won the Olympics for her because of changing that music. She is such a gracious young lady. She's really
but there's something to what you're talking about, because we see also with the age group there seems to be such an interest in emotional kind of ballady, weepy music that then they're trying to do as one giant piece instead of make cuts, but then it leaves you starting blah and leaves you also feeling blah because it just left you on this monotonous kind of nothingness that doesn't inspire a triumphal moment for someone.
Well, and it's also about structure. I said this way it'll be ABA and it'll make sense. You'll come back to the first piece. I said to end, I said, first of all, I don't like using the Rachmaninoff period. In Davis and Chloe, you could have found enough of that ballet to do whatever. I said, but this way, this structure makes sense as a structure when you're pulling parts out to bastardize what the music really is. And in skating, it's literally, music becomes bastardized the way they cut. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's the time limit thing. And I do have to explain that a bit to other music people because it sounds offensive. It sounds like "Happy Birthday, dear you," or something. You know, I mean, it's just weird edits because you know what's supposed to happen. Now, what about when someone like Meryl and Charlie, for instance, are working with Marina, who I think is a coach and sort of organizer who really does care about music? Okay, give us the story.
I feel like, maybe I have helped some skaters. I keep thinking. Marina, they were all afraid of Marina, judges and everybody.
Okay. As they should be.
So I got called by Marina to come, and Mitch called me and said, would you go work with Charlie and Meryl in Michigan? Marina's asked for you personally. And I said, sure, I'll go. I'll talk about the music and the phrasing, blah, 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 blah. So I go. And I spend a whole day there going through their first program in their
Scheherazade, the free dance.
Especially the Scheherazade. There were 5 spots in it where I told Marina, I said, okay, right here, this makes no sense. They're stroking around the end of the thing, and the music's heavy with these duck, 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 and nothing's happening. That's the major part of what's
right.
Yes. Oh, you're right. We'll fix that. So she goes out on the ice, fixes something, and I said, that makes all the sense in the world. It was that simple. And a couple of other things. And so we're done and everything. She comes up to me, gives me a big hug, and bows to me. Every time I see her now, she goes, She's so sweet. And everybody's like, why is she doing that? I said, she likes me.
Now,
anyway, but everybody's like, she's doing that to you? And I said, we have an understanding.
So
she respects people that use their knowledge to help in the sport.
I have a question. Is there a Canadian equivalent of a Joe Inman who is giving this kind of blunt feedback? Because it often feels like in Canadian skating culture, it's a bit of I don't know how to say this delicately. It's a bit of a circle jerk, right? Where they all enjoy each other's performances and talk about how wonderful Patrick and Tessa and Scott is, but they're never being critical about the shortcomings, especially the problems that they had in Sochi with...
You're saying it becomes a federation about support instead of actually help. Maybe.
Yes, instead of really fine-tuning the areas that need to improve.
Internally, they can be critical.
Okay.
I have worked with Canadian judges a lot, and I used to go to Ted Barton's camp in May, and then to another
Does
camp.
Ted get critical?
What?
Does Ted become critical? Because he's not when he commentates. So
Ted can be very honest, straightforward.
Really? Okay.
But he brought us in. He was smart. He brought me in from the U.S. Of course, he didn't bring me anymore because I'm a has-been. But and he brought a Japanese, and he brought Sissy Crick in, and so we were all there together, and we worked with the skaters from his area a lot, and it was interesting because I saw some real good improvement, but then when I saw him in competition, it kind of gone out the window. But it's all a matter of being able to do it. Who is the guy with the wired hair?
Kevin Reynolds?
Kevin Reynolds. He's a brilliant young man. And we did a So You Think You Can Dance type thing and judged him. He was brilliant. I was shocked. I mean, And Sissy and I were like, who is this person? And we told him, this is what you got to do when you're on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to connect. And so, anyway, I'm not sure if he ever could do that. But he was a very nice young man, very smart.
Now, did you ever able to get any, sorry, as you're talking about people that have asked to work with you, have you ever given Tom Zakrajcek feedback about improving the components of his...
Yes. Tom,
did he listen?
Tom has listened to me, surprisingly. And a lot of people are afraid to work with Tom. Mm-hmm. And I just told him to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Said, shut up and listen.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm the daddy here. And so I just said, I would go through my thing. And he finally realized I was there to help his skaters. And he does listen to me.
He doesn't seem to understand musicality or the components.
He's not in that area, which I told him.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get your skaters to work on their components every day
mm-hmm.
and make that a part of it, you're going to have trouble.
And they still don't. And he's so ambitious. And that's what it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, hopefully the point is with what's her name there now.
Tammy.
She does ask for that to be done. I've worked with Tammy's kids before, and she's interested in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom's okay with me. A lot of, and if he says something derogatory to me, he's never been nasty,
mm-hmm.
which I know he has to some people. But I've even worked with Tom Dixon
mm-hmm.
a little bit. And
who we love, yeah.
With, when he did that program for that guy from Minneapolis,
Alex,
and he can't remember which one it was, but it was really dynamo. I loved it. And I like what Tom does.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it's really quite good, but it's all up to the skater to continue to do it. You're only as good as the skater doing your work.
And he has a similar background to you with dance and with music. So that, yeah.
But I respect him, and I know he respects me because from just the way he talks.
Yeah.
And when somebody believes in what you're saying, they listen.
Mm-hmm.
There are some coaches, with some judges, they're not interested.
How do you find that about skaters? Like, do you find that skaters themselves ever were able to, like, kind of approach and ask for advice?
Didn't John Coughlin ask you for advice? Didn't you give that to John?
Yeah.
And Tanya, didn't you ask Tanya, or didn't Tanya come up to you?
Tanya,
you're not the one that told her to stay married, were you? Jeez, Joe.
Tanya came up to me at NHK right after she had done her triple axel. And she was a very interesting person, but her background brought her down. Mm-hmm. There's no two ways about it. She needed a lot of help to get out of that mentality. This is my psychoanalysis of it.
But your personal experience was nice. She didn't believe in herself, number one, in my estimation. And she never thought she was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't say that probably, but that's what I got from her. All she kept saying was, now if I do my triple axel, can I beat Midori? Can I beat Midori if I do this? And I said, it's more than just the triple axel. Yes, that's a great point. And that'll stick in the judge's mind when they're putting their marks down. But you can't fall on three other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And still win. And she, well, if I only fall on one, I said, let's not get into supposition here.
Mm-hmm.
Think positive about what you're going to do well. And if you attain that jump and do it, then just know you're on your way.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about Tanya was not, in my estimation, was not an unartistic person.
Mm-hmm.
Her problem was she wouldn't open her ears to listen to anybody. She put the blind down and didn't want to hear anymore.
Yeah, she'd occasionally hit a moment with the arm or the fingers, and you're like, well, that actually was a refined moment, like genuinely. And then you just kind of dropped it.
She could have done so much more, but she was her own worst enemy. That's my personal analysis.
She had more inherent grace and style than Midori Ito did. They both were performed.
Without question.
Yeah. Midori Ito, that Olympic free skate that they gave her in 92 was the best piece of choreography to disguise an inherent weakness in a skater that I think we've seen. It was brilliant. But I wanted to ask, as we wrap things up, overall, now that we have this system, do you like the programs better under IJS? Does the formula bug you, or do you think that's
This is really funny. I've gone back over some old skating, quote-unquote, old Jenna Lin, who was way ahead of her time in movements to music. And that was because of Slavka, for sure. But Janet was able to do what Slavka gave her because her edge work was good. She may not have the best figures because I think her turns were a problem. But she did have good edges, and she knew how to get power and accelerate. But I've gone back over some programs of even John Curry, who's beautiful on the ice. Pretty boring programs at times. Not much in them. Step sequence, chalk-ta, hold-ta, chalk-ta, hold. You know what you saw? I told Brian Bottano. I said, Brian and I are fairly good friends. I said, he hated the system at first, and he may still hate it. I don't know. I just said, you guys should have had to do what these skaters have to do now with the step sequences. You did figures. Can you imagine how wonderful these would be?
Right.
I said, I don't want to hear it. We're now finally seeing the vocabulary of skating in skating. We never saw this in the 6-0 system. 3 turns, Choctaws, Mohawks. Maybe Janet did a rocker and a counter in a little sequence in one of her programs. In just movements, skating, not in a sequence. Nobody did complicated sequences. And even going further back, when the programs were like 5 minutes, there was hardly anything in them. It was beautiful edge skating and stuff, but there should be more in skating. There has to be more than with the use of the body, the multi-dimensional use of the body, dimension of space, using outer reaches, inner reaches, lower reaches, and using their body in all kinds of movements, whether it's asymmetrical or whatever you want it to be. But I missed some of that originally. Do I think it's better? No, it's different. I think it could be a great, and I think they're on the way to getting, remember the system's young still, and how old the other system was. You never saw much of a development in the other system, except you saw better tricks. Then more went to the first mark. Then the second mark came up. People started doing the presentation more once the tricks leveled out. And I think that'll happen with this sport. I doubt if we ever get to quintuplets. I don't think that is possible. It's probably possible, but I think it's stupid. I think that what's there now should develop for like 2 decades and make the sport beautiful. So there is a real 50-50, not a 60-50 balance of technique. Technique now carries it all, meaning technique, not a movement, but how you spin. And at least spins now get credit. They got 0 credit in 6-0. 0. Lucinda Rue got a place higher, maybe, because she really only had through triple loop.
Right.
So, but that's my feeling. I like this. I love judging in it because I feel like I'm finished. I put my paper down. I've given my all to everything I saw, from my background And I feel like and I don't do it perfectly, but that's not the point. The point is I've given an analysis that makes sense to what I believe. And that's why you have 9 judges, not 1.
Well, as we wrap this up, Joe, can we get you to judge an event with us? Maybe the men at the World Championships? We could go.
We want you to walk through the criteria with us as we're judging and interpreting what we think that room in Munich really meant.
Okay.
We're going to hold you to it, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on the skating lesson today.
It's been fun. Thank you.